The governments will continually print money and continually just devalue the currencies, and that's going to be very supportive for gold. And gold's going to drag along silver. And with the whole green plan and with the whole evolution of going electric and getting off oil and gas and turning this planet or electrifying this planet in other ways, this whole silver story is not even hit a headline yet.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with the Miles Franklin Market Update. And with us today, a very special guest, Keith Neumeyer from First Majestic Silver. And we also have on the line Andy from Miles Franklin. Andy and Keith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be here, Elijah. Thank you, Keith. We appreciate you being here very, very much.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thanks for the opportunity. It's unfortunate we can't meet together, though. Yes. Prefer face-to-face over this form of communication any day.
Definitely. And I mean, that's what we've had to live with, since March. And speaking of that, I'd love to have you give us an update, Keith, on kind of the silver industry since COVID. What does it look like?
Well, it'll be really interesting to see what the production numbers are for 2020. We had at one point, we added it all up. Todd Anthony in our office went through all the production that the different countries had shut down, and we came up with a number of something around 55% of all silver production worldwide was shut down, for a period of a good 6 to 8 weeks. And that's a lot of production that just disappeared. And First Majestic, we're trying to make up as much as we can. One of the mines we think will make all of it up. The other two mines where we still don't know yet. We're still, a couple of months away from the year end, so it's hard to really tell. But some of the other mines, Peru shut down a little bit longer. Argentina had some more startup challenges, and there's other unique situations depending on the company and the mine. And, last year, the 2019 number was just slightly over 800 million ounces of production worldwide, down about 50 million from the previous year. So we have over the last 3 or 4 years seen declining silver production from the miners. That was mostly to do with price. Now we've got this COVID thing, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see production well under 800 million ounces in 2020.
Definitely. And I know you've talked about, Keith, that the silver supply and also premiums have been quite impacted recently. Can you expand on that?
Well, I hate charging premiums. Andy probably wants to maybe comment on this because he's a little bit closer to the retail side of the business than I am. But, I reluctantly actually bumped our price up. We were selling silver, as the silver price dropped. I think we're about $18.50, and then we dropped it by 50 cents down to 18, and then we dropped it to $17.50, and the floor just kept falling. And I go, what's going on here? So we stopped selling physical metal at $17.50, and then all of a sudden, within about a week or so, our sales skyrocketed. They must have gone up by 500% in a matter of days. And then we got calls from some of the other groups out there, including Sprott Money, Eric Sprott's daughter, saying, "Hey, move your price up." And so Jill in our Vancouver office bumped the price up to $20, and it still kept coming in, and then we just kept moving it up, and then no matter what price we moved the price up to, it didn't matter. The sales just kept going, and we then started worrying about our inventory because the inventory was just going out the door like crazy. And so we put restrictions on our sales. We started restricting sales to only 100 ounces per order. And we were, getting $7-8 an ounce premium, and we were wiped out pretty quick. And we fortunately have some pretty good relationships with. We switched over to Scottsdale, and they've been really great to us. And I'm a big fan of the Scottsdale product. And they came and filled in the gap for us, and we were able to fill our inventories up. But still, the premiums are today, $5 over spot.
Yeah, in March, Keith, when the price fell, very often in this industry, there are people, in large part due to the alternative media, people like Elijah and all the people out there who you are interviewed by, who are alerting people to the supply-demand fundamentals to the reasons to own precious metals, information they're not finding elsewhere. And very often when the price falls, it's counterintuitive because the demand greatly increases when the price falls. And this is part of what I want to talk with you about. When the price falls in this industry, and you just kind of exemplified that, it has very little to do with supply-demand fundamentals and more to do with paper manipulation. One of the reasons that I respect you, Keith, is that you have been very outspoken about manipulation. You and I have had the good fortune of seeing one another every year at the Sprott Conference, and I speak at the Sprott Conference, and typically the topic of my conversation is manipulation. And I get up on the stage and talk manipulation in a group of people where I'm not so sure that it's very well received by everybody. And I've gotten heat for it in the years past. Now, I feel vindicated by the $1 billion fine levied against JPMorgan and their admission of spoofing. Quite frankly, I think it should have been more charges levied upon them. But what I'm getting at is this. You have been talking about the manipulation for a long time. People in this industry who listen to manipulation understand that when the price falls, that's a buying opportunity because it is not reflective of the supply-demand fundamentals. I guess my large question to you, my biggest question to you is, why have we not heard this from your peers in the industry? Why are you the maverick out there that supposedly some of the other miners get angry at because you speak the truth? And now with the vindication and the validation from the Justice Department, yeah, this is going on with the fines, not just with JP, but with Scotia and with Deutsche and all of the other banks that play this game of suppressing the price, and I would argue to accumulate physical. Maybe I'm wrong, but my question to you is, why aren't your peers joining you in, because they're selling a product that's being held down. It's in their best interest to shine a light on that. Why are you the maverick alone in this endeavor when it should be all of you?
You know, I don't know why. I would love to have more miners on my side and speaking the truth and then speaking, you know, what's happening in the space. I remember a famous roundtable discussion that was in Switzerland. I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, and there was 5 or 6 top CEOs of the largest gold mining companies on the stage. And then some of these individuals were members of the World Gold Council. And I forget who the commentator was, but he asked the panel and the same question, and each one of them had to answer. And he said, this is the question: is there manipulation in the gold market? Every one of the panelist members said no. And here I am in the audience saying, if you've got the 5 biggest gold companies in the world telling the world that there's no manipulation in the gold market, that's just shocking. And it is pretty shocking industry, and that's one of the reasons why I tend to be a little bit outspoken, and I do get criticized by a lot of my peers, and I think when I walk into a room, I think that often some of them would prefer to walk out of the room and not chat with me because they probably know what's going to come out of my mouth, but nevertheless, look, I'm going to stick to my guns. I've been proven right with GATA. I've been a GATA supporter since 2009. I think I think it was 1999, if I recall. I think GATA was formed in 1999, and I think I was one of their first subscribers. And so I was pretty early in this whole belief that manipulation is going on in the markets. And it's not, as you know, it's not just the gold and silver markets. It's the currency markets. It's the, every single stock, and we've got governments going into the markets now and buying stuff. It's a pretty crazy environment that we're in these days. And I don't know whoever gave our politicians the right to use taxpayer money to manipulate the markets. They think, I gather, it's the right thing. They think they're somehow protecting all of us, but actually in the long run, they're hurting all of us by, creating these false markets, which aren't good for anyone.
Well, I'd like to just follow up with that and say, look, as far as GATA is concerned, I think we were right there with you, one of the very first people that signed up with Bill and Chris. And every time I get an opportunity publicly, and I do it as often as possible, I like to thank Bill and Chris I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude for having the courage to stand up and to speak the truth in the light of a very difficult journey that they've taken. And their vindication, too, I think, is something that we should all be happy for them and thank them. But I will tell all the people listening, it's because of your courage. It's because of your outspokenness. It's because you speak the truth. And maybe it's because you're one of the few, if not the only businessman that is a CEO of a company that is largely run in the industry by geologists. Maybe you see things the way a businessman would. For that, because of that, and because of what you've said, First Majestic is my largest holding. And I think I encourage everybody to own mining shares. This is the time to own mining shares. I think if you look at Apple, they have more cash in their account than the total market capitalization of every mining share on the planet. The potential in a stock like First Majestic is fantastic, which leads me to my second question, and then I'll turn it over to Elijah to ask you a few questions and some viewer questions. In my industry, in the physical metal industry, Keith, what we get so very often is, hey, this ratio is so out of whack. Now, when I look at a ratio of 80 to 1, and I describe it as 4 feet of snow in the Florida Keys in July. Historically, it's way, way out of whack. It's an anomaly. It doesn't happen very often. And if it snowed 4 feet of snow in July in Florida Keys, the residents aren't going to go out and buy Polaris snowmobiles. They may go and make a snow angel and have a snowball fight, realizing it's an anomaly. We saw 125 to 1 in March, the greatest disparity in human history. Now, I've heard you say publicly that what's coming out of the ground is as low as 8 to 1 geologically. I know going way back thousands of years, the ratio is somewhere around 15.5 to 1. My question to you is, when do you think, if ever, we see an expression of that 8 to 1? Because if we take gold and call it 1900 and divide it by 8, what's that? $220 an ounce. It should be fair value right now. Is that really what that ratio is saying? Because I know silver is found in nature in a form called epithermal, close to the surface. So the big finds were found long ago. You got to dig further, explore harder, expend more energy and money. At a 6 or 7 or 8 to 1 ratio, do you think we will ever see a reflection of that in its price?
Yeah, I do actually, and because I'm a believer of markets, I'm a believer of supply demand, and I'm a believer that ultimately all markets will revert to a true supply demand market, and they could go through periods of time, long periods of time, where you have these aberrations that occur. The physical market will prevail, and the physical market will overtake any paper market. And I think with these fines that are happening, I think that's all going to help us.
Now, Lawrence is wanting to know, kind of getting back to what we were talking about at the beginning, the impact of COVID on the silver market and all of that, the silver industry. He asks, do you believe we will see another liquidity crisis in the metals sector like we saw back in March of this year? And if so, will buying silver when buying silver, will there be the high premiums that we saw before?
Well, I'm not sure if there was a liquidity crisis. There was a financial crisis in the paper markets, whereby everything was being sold, and silver being such a tiny little market, it got quite badly damaged. But there's lots of other stocks. You look at Carnival Cruise Lines. You look at there's a dozen look at the airline stocks. Look at there's a ton of industries whose stocks got just absolutely decimated during that period of time, and many of them haven't recovered yet. The mining sector recovered quite nicely over the last 6 months and is having some challenges now because of the election and because of all the talk around COVID and the vaccine and what impact it's going to have and all the talk around stimulus. So there's a lot of noise in the marketplace right now that is affecting markets. So once we resolve some of this stuff and get through the noise, we all know, or at least I'm of the opinion, the governments will continually print money and continually just devalue the currencies, and that's going to be very supportive for gold. And gold's going to drag along silver. And with the whole green plan and with the whole, evolution of going electric and getting off oil and gas and, turning this planet or electrifying this planet in other ways, this whole silver story is not even hit a headline yet. We have seen some talk about copper, thanks to Robert Friedland. He's been talking about copper for 10 years now, and people are finally catching on to that potential problem there. But you've got two big problems. One is copper and one is silver. And we just don't have enough of either of those metals to do what we need to do as the human race.
That says an awful lot. I mean, those are two of the most important industrial metals on the planet. You can't build or conduct electricity without the two of them. So, yeah, I think that what you say there speaks volumes, at least it does to me.
Yeah. And, there's talk, maybe you could use aluminum, for example, but aluminum is no good for high temperature situations, and it breaks down over time. So it's not a great metal to be using. Copper, gold's the best electric conductor, but it's way too expensive. Silver's second best, but in some applications it's expensive as well. You don't see computer companies covering their entire circuit boards with silver. But they do cover their circuit boards with copper because that's the third best conductor. But you need that silver to connect all the high-speed connections between all the circuitry. That's why you see the chips all connected to the copper circuit board with silver. And just like an electric car, in a normal Tesla car, you've got 6,000 battery cells with mostly copper, but with silver connecting them all together, because that computer is working on a very high speed, making sure those batteries turn on and turn off and don't heat up to any great degree to make that car unsafe. Very sophisticated electronic system that will not work without silver.
One of the viewers' questions is actually asking about, do you think any of these big companies like Apple or Samsung or any of these companies might want to secure, some silver if the price continues to rise and stuff like that? Could they end up buying a silver mine or having a special deal with one or something like that? What is your perspective on that?
If I was Apple, I would go out and buy my entire stream of raw metals because they've got the money to do it. And if you look at, and even at Tesla, for example, Elon Musk is actually making investments in raw materials because he sees the supply constraints going on over the next couple of decades. When you've got the amount of money that Apple's got, they could buy every single silver company on the planet. I don't know how many times over, but you look at the silver industry. We produce 800 million ounces a year, let's call it, at $24 an ounce. That's a little over 20 billion dollar market cap. They could buy the whole industry. Why wouldn't you do it? Of course, they're going to have to pay up to it. And if they do it once, then the next one's going to be more expensive. And the next one's going to be more expensive. And because the institutions will get wind out of, what Apple's doing. And maybe we'll actually start to see a reset of some kind in the metal price if the electronics manufacturers actually try to do that. I'd love to see it happen, but I'm surprised they don't because, if you look at what's happening in the industry, when I put this company together 18 years ago, we had computers, we had cell phones. Those are known entities. And that ball was rolling quite aggressively. I knew every single home on the planet wanted refrigerators, wanted freezers, wanted toasters, wanted computers and cell phones. So to me, when I did the supply-demand fundamentals on silver, that's why I put the silver company together back in 2002, because I came from a copper company, as you probably know. So I was already, feeling like supply demand was so important to me. So silver to me was just copper on steroids. And then that's why, and there's no silver companies out there to speak of. So it was just a natural for me. But, now we've got solar panels taking about 15% of all the supply. And then you got the government of California, you've got governments around the world, building solar fields. You got Saudi Arabia building one of the largest solar fields in the world. You got the energy behind the solar industry is not going to stop anytime soon. That 14% could hit 25% over the next couple of years. That's one buyer. Then you add electric cars on top of that, which didn't exist 18 years ago when I put this company together. And we've been asked by a number of institutions lately, because now institutions are actually starting to look at this industry. And so we're putting numbers together, and the numbers are pretty fascinating. And you probably maybe heard me throw some of these numbers out already, because we have been doing some internal research. But if you look at the automotive industry, there's 1.4 billion automobiles sitting on the surface of the earth right now. There's about 100 billion automobiles produced each year. I think 2019 it was like 90 something billion. Or million, pardon me. Million, 90 million. So in 2019, there was 2.4 million electric cars produced out of the 90 plus million cars. So it's less than about 2%, call it. You've got governments around the world wanting to go completely electric. There, cities around the world have said we're not going to let fuel combustion cars on our streets after, name a date. Every city's different, but I've heard dates of 2030, 2035. So how are you going to replace 1.4 billion cars, that are currently there with electric cars at $25 silver? It's just not going to happen, right? The miners need $100, $200 silver, and probably 5 or 10 years of a lot of hard work, a lot of exploration success, a lot of permitting, a lot of cooperation from governments, to get that kind of supply, which we've never seen before, come into the marketplace to supply that demand.
All right. Well, Keith Neumeyer, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers, and where can they find you online?
I'm always making predictions. I make wishes and predictions. It's kind of the same thing. But I'm on Twitter, Keith_Neumeyer, and I'll also go to. I'm the chairman of a gold company, First Mining Gold. Go to their website. Good, see what's going on there. Obviously, we talked about silver today. Founder and CEO of First Majestic Silver. Just go to their website, and great information there. And talks a little bit about cars, supply demand fundamentals of the metal, and of course about the company.
Keith Neumeyer, once again, thank you so much for your time, and God bless.
Thank you, Keith. Stay well, bud.
Thanks, Andy.